Life has a way of blindsiding you, turning your carefully constructed plans into a tangled mess of chaos. I thought I had it all figured out: a stable career, a loving family, and a predictable rhythm to my days. Growing up, I'd watched my parents stumble through their relationship, vowing I'd never let that happen to me. Yet here I was, navigating a landscape of shattered dreams and unanswered questions. Before everything unraveled, weekends were reserved for family outings. My wife, Adelia, and I would take our daughters to the park or explore a new hiking trail. It felt like we were the picture-perfect family. I wasn't naive enough to think we'd never have problems, but I didn't expect the foundation to crack so abruptly. Looking back now, the signs were there. Subtle at first. A certain distance in her gaze, her laughter less spontaneous. By the time it became undeniable, I was too deep in my routine to notice. Adelia had already started to drift, and I didn't realize I was losing her until it was far too late. It's been over 5 years since the day Adelia, my wife of 15 years, and once a respected branch manager at a prominent bank, announced she wanted out of our marriage. Her reasoning was straightforward, almost clinical. "I don't love you anymore," she said. "There's no one else. We've simply grown apart." I had my doubts, but I couldn't prove anything. Soon after, I overheard her talking on her cell about big changes coming into her life. We agreed to joint custody of our daughters, then 14 and 12, both of whom chose to live with her. I was reminded of all this when I saw an article in US Today this Thursday. It featured Adelia Lynn Peterson, now the regional VP, and her husband Ronald Peterson, a senior VP, at a charity event in New York. Their daughters, Amanda and Miranda, now 19 and 17, were also there, described as up-and-comers. Adelia had the status she always wanted. The article said she was highly sought after in social circles, and I recognized Ronald as a former acquaintance from when he and Adelia worked together at the local Bank of America branch. Our daughters were now living under a different last name. I wanted to confirm what I saw, so I planned to ask my assistant, Helen Beard, for help, but she was off that day. Then I remembered something from our divorce proceedings. Adelia had failed to show up on the day the divorce was to be finalized. The judge insisted we both testify, but her lawyer claimed she had been transferred out of state. When I was asked if I had given permission for our daughters to leave the state, I said no. That's when the nightmare truly began. Judge McDonald's tone shifted immediately. He asked me to try calling my family, so I went outside to use my cell. All the numbers I had for them were disconnected, and when I checked their Facebook pages, I found I'd been blocked. I told my lawyer everything. The judge immediately issued an arrest warrant for Adelia, charging her with parental abduction. He paused the divorce until she appeared in court with the children. Adelia's lawyer argued it was no big deal and suggested I might be lying, but the judge was firm. "That's why she should be here," he said, "with both their daughters." During the police investigation, I learned that Adelia's family had claimed I was mistreating our daughters, though there was no evidence to back it up. Social services, however, had found nothing to suggest any misuse. The rumors spread by Adelia's family had taken root in town. Over the years, Judge McDonald and I stayed in touch, bonding over fly fishing. So when I dropped by to see him that evening, I brought the newspaper article with me. "Look at this," I said, showing him the photo of Adelia and her new family. The judge went pale. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. The next photo was of my daughters, now with different last names. The judge immediately made calls to the FBI. "Why didn't the bank help you find her?" Ruth, the judge's wife, asked. "They got a federal court ruling saying it was a family matter and they didn't have to comply with the order," I replied. I left soon after, telling the judge to call me in the morning. It had been a long, emotional night. I couldn't help but wonder, was there more to Adelia and Ronald's relationship than just friendship? I never imagined it back then, when she was hired as a loan officer and I was starting my consulting business. The question lingered. With my daughter's name changes, were they really mine or his? Did either of us know the truth? I tried to push the doubts aside, remembering that Amanda had been born before Adelia started working at the bank. The next morning, I couldn't help but focus on Helen. Over the past 5 years, her dislike for her cousin had only deepened. I knew Helen believed me, and her actions proved it. More than once, I wanted to tell her how I felt, but I never did. She deserved someone better, someone who wasn't caught in the nightmare I was living. Helen was beautiful. Her auburn hair, warm smile, and kind heart were everything a good man could ask for. I daydreamed about her, but I knew I couldn't ask her to share my burdens. The next day at work kept me distracted until Helen knocked and let in 2 FBI agents. "John, there are 2 gentlemen here from the FBI. Shall I let them in?" "Of course, I've been expecting them," I replied, standing up. "I'm Mac Holmes, and this is Douglas Drysdale," Mac said. "We need to gather some background on your situation." I explained how I met her current husband years ago. While I didn't think there had been an affair then, with my daughter's name changes and their current relationship, it raised questions. "The only way to know the truth is to have DNA tests for all of us," I said. "I thought Amanda was born before Adelia worked at the bank, but now I wondered if Adelia had known Ronald even earlier." I continued. "Judge McDonald stopped the divorce proceedings after charging Adelia with parental abduction. She ignored a court order by not showing up." "Did she file for divorce in New York and marry him?" Douglas asked. I confirmed the divorce hadn't been granted because Adelia had failed to appear. "The court records will show that Judge Donald doesn't tolerate nonsense," I added. "He's tough. He learned that lesson the hard way with a corrupt lawyer years ago." "Did you give your wife permission to move out of state with the children?" Mac asked. "No," I said. "Her lawyer told us she moved out of state, and the judge asked me to try calling them. When I did, their numbers were disconnected, and I was blocked on Facebook." "So, she moved before the divorce was final and married soon after," Douglas remarked. "Exactly," Mac said. "This was all planned." "It wasn't a mistake," Douglas added. "It contradicts what we heard in her interview in New York." "When was the last time you heard from your wife?" Douglas asked. 2 weekends before the final court hearing," I explained. "Adelia and the girls took the last of their things from our house. Child Services had interviewed them, and they chose to live with her. Since then, I haven't received any legal or public notice," I added. "So, I assume I'm still not divorced." "That means someone forged your signature on their adoption papers," Max said. "We can charge them both with covering up a federal crime." I asked about the adoption papers, but they didn't answer. "Mr. Masters, could you provide us with your signature?" Mac asked. "Helen, please prepare a letter on our letterhead, verifying my compliance with their request for my signature," I instructed. "Make sure to witness it and make a copy for our records before handing over the original." "Do you still live at 87654 Yale Road East?" Mac asked. "No," I replied. "I had to get a court order to sell it." "The police were tired of the rumors about me being a sexual offender," I continued. "After I was attacked and hospitalized for the second time, Judge McDonald helped me get the order. I now live at Ryder Lake, a private place with 5 acres and security." I updated Helen on everything. She was shocked to learn her cousin had been found, and her eyes filled with hope and questions, but there was still so much unknown. "Helen, when I leave tonight, I'll shut off my cell. If you need me, call my home number in an emergency," I said. Helen despised her cousin Adelia for ruining a good man's life and reputation. She had seen John lose friends and family to the lies Adelia spread. It frustrated her to wait for the truth to come out. But after everything she'd witnessed, she knew lies were often accepted as truth. John had focused solely on work after his marriage fell apart. His consulting business had grown 3-fold, but 2 years ago, he started emerging from his shell. Still, what surprised Helen most was that since Adelia and the kids left, she hadn't heard John mention their names once. Not until today. She had watched him deteriorate, and now he was a shadow of his former self. Helen was 14 when she first met John Masters, a 19-year-old at a pre-Christmas family gathering. Adelia had just announced their engagement, and the attention was all on her. Helen immediately knew their relationship wouldn't last. John, a successful financial planner, put family first, while Adelia, a social climber, always needed to be the center of attention. Helen had predicted their marriage would fall apart once their kids hit their teens, and she was right. Helen's own marriage had ended tragically when her husband died while serving in the military before they could start a family. Afterward, she turned to John for support. He helped her through the hardest times, becoming both her boss and her closest friend. Over the last 5 years, as John endured his own personal hell, Helen realized she wanted to grow old with him. John's main struggle was that he couldn't escape his past, a past controlled by the actions of others. Rumors had spread when Adelia and the kids disappeared. Some even believed John had liquidated them to protect his reputation. People thought the reason for his extensive security was that their bodies were hidden on his property. One night, I stopped at Ruby Tuesdays for dinner, ordering the salad bar and catfish. I had just returned to my table when Adelia's father, Roger, appeared uninvited. He sat down without asking. I heard from Adelia this morning, Roger said. I didn't respond, just kept eating. The last time he'd spoken to me in public, he had threatened to eliminate me for allegedly mistreating his granddaughters. Public scenes like that only fueled the rumors. Amanda and Miranda are doing well, Roger continued. Adelia finally admitted to me that you never touched your kids the way she accused you. She used that lie as an excuse to disappear. I want to find a way to apologize to you. He paused. She's telling the family that I'll believe them once they give me a notarized statement explaining everything. I put down my fork and looked at him. Once they do that and come to my office, I'll believe them. Until then, this conversation is pointless. You're all dead to me. Damn, that's harsh, John, Roger said. Well, I'm just treating you how you've treated me these last 5 years. Think about that and leave me to eat in peace. I've been slandered by your family for something I didn't do, I added. I watched him walk away, irritated. Did he think a 2-minute conversation could undo 5 years of pain? Did they really think I'd let it all slide? A few minutes later, the waitress who had served me sat down. Mr. Masters, I went to school with your daughters. I overheard the conversation just now, and I have to tell you, neither of them knew what was going on that Friday before they disappeared. I saw the man who just left working with other family members while they packed up. Thank you for telling me the truth, I said. She smiled and returned to work. When I paid the bill, I tipped her generously. I spent the weekend fishing, catching and releasing my limit. Fresh rainbow trout with eggs and toast became my favorite meal. On Monday morning, I was at work early, making coffee and reading the Us Today newspaper, disappointed that nothing significant had been reported. Helen showed up half an hour early, practically glowing with excitement. She poured herself some coffee and joined me. Looking back, Adelia and I got married right after high school. Amanda came about a year later. I spent the first few years flipping houses, while she started as a bank teller and worked her way up in finance. When Miranda was born, I had my future all planned, I said. Helen nodded. I heard what you told Roger Friday. Hell, everyone did. My phone rang nonstop all weekend, I replied. Do you blame him? After everything the family's done to him, he's become a pariah here. Helen looked serious. I've got one question, boss. Why are you asking for notarized statements? Public slander, I said with a smile. Oh, crap, she said. You're going after everything she has, aren't you? That's the only way to clear my name, I replied. And I'm freezing their assets until the suit is resolved. They'll be forced to rely on a public defender. Do you really want to go to federal court with a free lawyer? Helen asked. Well, boss, this week's going to be interesting, she said. If everyone who called me follows through, we'll have about 20 people. Most of the family are decent, honest people, she continued. The problem is they've accepted the lies as truth. I told them to think about it at church on Sunday. The question is, will their guilt make them do what's right? As Helen walked to her desk, she turned with a playful smile and said, Boss, some of us single girls actually enjoy a quiet morning fishing for the first time in years. I couldn't help but laugh. Before leaving for the day, I told Helen, thanks for putting a smile on my face. She was my rock. If it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't have survived the last 5 years. By Thursday afternoon, we had 24 notarized statements, all confirming that Adelia had told people she left because I had been mistreating our daughters. She had claimed she filed for divorce on those grounds, but anyone who checked the court documents would see the truth. Some had helped her sneak away with the kids, promising to keep quiet. This week, they admitted that everything she had said about me was a lie. I believed Adelia was scared of losing the new life she had created and felt no guilt for what she had done. If I hadn't caught sight of her in the paper, she would have continued as if nothing happened. My daughters, who hadn't tried to contact me, must have believed whatever Adelia had told them. At this point, my only hope was finding some satisfaction in seeing justice served. It was clear I had been erased from my daughters' lives, just like the rest of the family had done. Helen had tracked down their legal address, workplace, and financial details. Your appointment with the lawyer is at 2. Make sure Adelia gets served before anything else happens. Also, ask for an order to freeze their assets, she instructed. I thought, Helen, you're covering everything. God help Adelia if you ever meet her in person. I returned to the office at 4:30 carrying a bottle of chilled champagne and 2 glasses. The lawyer Helen recommended was on board. I handed her everything: court records, stenographer's notes, signed affidavits, and the warrant for Adelia's arrest. I also included the news article showing my wife's new life. When the lawyer found out about Bank of America's role, she suggested we sue them too. As long as one lawsuit covers the other, I'm in, I said. She smiled. Okay, it's on. We shared the champagne as we chatted when the phone rang. Helen picked it up and mouthed, "It's the judge." I turned on the speaker. "Hi, Donald, how's it going?" I asked. "Good, all things considered," he replied. "I wanted to let you know the FBI is moving forward with a grand jury against Adelia and Ronald Peterson next Wednesday. They'll also seek to bring Miranda Peterson into protective custody and request DNA tests for everyone involved. Your older daughter is legally an adult now, so she's beyond their control," the judge added. "Thanks for the update," I said. He continued. "Regarding your divorce, I'll grant it with favorable terms the moment I have Adelia in court, even if it's by video link." Helen added, "I'm holding her accountable for her actions. It's a serious matter." "Can the judge jail her?" I asked. "The abduction charges fall under the FBI's jurisdiction, but he can rule on the contempt charge for not showing up," Helen explained. "I have no idea what the law allows there," I said. "Guess we'll have to wait and see," Helen replied, her voice tinged with sadness. 5 more weeks won't change anything. At least it gives my lawyer time to work," I said. By the following Thursday, my lawyer had successfully served the papers to Adelia and Ronald at their workplace, freezing all their assets. Later that day, FBI agent Doug Drysdale called to ask me to come in for a DNA test before 6 p.m. I gladly complied. On Saturday morning, while fishing on the lake, my phone rang. It was Helen. "You need to check out the U.S. Today newspaper," she said. "Adelia, Ronald, and Miranda were detained by the FBI last night at a social event." "I'm on my way to shore," I replied. "Curiosity's killing me. I need to know what charges they're facing." It took about an hour to get to the office. Helen was right. The headline read, "Abduction, under federal law. Abduction is defined as using force, deceit, or fear to hold someone captive for personal gain. It is a felony, with an average sentence of 12 years. The article went on. "This is just one of the charges against Adelia and Ronald Peterson. They are also facing legal consequences for leaving Missouri with their children without clearing it with Adelia's husband, from whom she was divorcing at the time, citing irreconcilable differences in court records." The judge issued a bench warrant for abduction after halting the divorce proceedings due to Adelia's failure to appear. The article revealed how the couple's actions ultimately led to her capture. It seems Adelia married Ronald Peterson in New York City just a week after leaving Missouri. They used John Masters' name in documents to have Ronald adopt Amanda and Miranda, but the paperwork was fraudulent, including a forged signature. The FBI now believes this was done to hide the girls in plain sight. Ronald, a senior VP at Bank of America, used his power to prevent John from locating his family, even after John tried to get the bank to release Adelia's whereabouts. The article also discussed my civil slander suit against Adelia after she told over 20 people I'd been sexually mistreating our daughters. It touched on 2 open attempted homicide cases against me, as many believed I had liquidated 3 people who tried to damage me. The police commented, "There are 2 open attempted homicide cases, as he was the sufferer. Many here think he liquidated them and got away with it. He's also suing Bank of America and Ronald Peterson for marital interference." The article concluded with a reflection on the justice system. Doesn't the sufferer deserve justice? Probably not. In our society, criminals get the attention, but the sufferer pays the price. The article hit hard, laying out the facts. Just as I was refilling my coffee, the phone rang. It was the Southeast Missouri newspaper. I confirmed the article's accuracy. The reporter asked about my experiences over the last 5 years. I told him about the open homicide cases and how rumors had spiraled out of control. When I asked his opinion on what I'd been through, he replied, "I'd call it a living hell." It was surreal to think the nightmare might finally be over. My name was being cleared, but the damage was done. 5 years had ruined my relationship with my daughters and distanced me from my own family. When this was all behind me, I planned to sell the business and leave the area. For good, if the one person I trusted would come with me. Before leaving the office, I cut out the article and photos, scanned them, and made copies for my lawyer. Amanda Peterson was shocked when the FBI arrested her mother and stepfather. Afterward, they took her younger sister to a different vehicle. One agent explained that her father had never agreed to the adoption and that the documents bearing his signature were forgeries. Her mother was charged with parental abduction, and Ronald with abduction and aiding in a felony cover-up. Miranda would be placed in protective custody until DNA confirmed her biological father. Amanda returned home to pack, then sat at St. Louis Airport waiting for her connecting flight to Cape. She picked up a copy of US Today and read the entire article. By the time her flight landed, she was in tears. Amanda couldn't understand why her mother had hurt her father. She remembered when her mother told her father she no longer loved him and wanted a divorce. Her father had been devastated, but her mother's response was cold. Who cares? He's just a man, and there are plenty more like him. Now, reading about her mother's past relationship with Ronald, even more questions arose. As the plane began its descent, Amanda wondered if the rental car booth at the airport still had a phone. At 11 a.m., Amanda Peterson parked outside her old home, waiting for the sheriff's vehicle to leave. 2 hours later, 2 unmarked cars pulled up and blocked her in. An officer, Colt drawn, approached her car, identified himself, and ordered her to exit the vehicle with her hands raised. She complied. The taller officer demanded, "Who are you and why are you watching this place?" "I'm Amanda Peterson," she answered. "Who's your father?" he asked. "John Masters," she replied. The officer's eyes widened. "Oh, crap," he muttered. "Tom, tell Joe and Jody to put the coffee on. We need to talk." "I'm Detective Joel Smithers," the officer said. "I know your father. What brings you back here?" "Partly what happened last night and the article in US Today," Amanda said. "I have a copy in the car. Should I get it?" "Please, it'll help," Joel replied. After a quick round of coffee, Detective Smithers read the article aloud. Everyone in the room seemed stunned, except for him. "You believe my father, don't you?" Amanda asked. "I was one of the few who did," Joel answered. "The rumors about your father were already out of control by the time they started. This house was vandalized so much he had to sell. After he was attacked, we were lucky to get to him before he bled out. People here thought he'd liquidated you all." "You're telling me it drove him away?" Amanda asked, voice trembling. "Yes," Joel said. "He's living at Ryder Lake now, on 5 acres, completely fenced in. No one's seen him in town for 2 years." "How do I contact him?" Amanda wondered. "I think I know," Tom said. "I'll check if his business has an emergency contact." Minutes later, Tom returned with an address. "Do you know a Helen Beard?" he asked. "She's a second cousin of my mom. Why?" Amanda replied. "She's the only one who can reach your father 24/7. She's tough, protects him fiercely. She's on her way to his business now. She'll wait for you there," Tom said, handing her the address. Amanda thanked them and left. "What kind of woman would do what Adelia did to John?" Jody asked. "One who blames him for everything that went wrong in her life," Joanne replied. At the business, Helen Beard opened the door for Amanda and immediately turned on her phone's audio recorder. "The first question, Amanda. What do you know about the time of your disappearance?" Amanda took a deep breath, then shared what she recalled. "Mom woke us up early, said we were going on a surprise trip to New York. We had no idea what was happening. I found out later that some family members knew about her relationship with Ronald, but thought it was just a friendship." Helen nodded. "So you didn't realize anything was wrong?" "No," Amanda answered. "It wasn't until we were on the road that I noticed our phones were gone. Mom said we were moving because she got a promotion. I believed her, but I know now it was a lie." Helen listened carefully as Amanda continued. "She said the phones were canceled because of the move. We drove for over 20 hours in 2 days. Then, when we got to New York, Mom gave Miranda a new phone with a New York number. We didn't know it was Ronald's home we were headed to until we got there." Helen raised an eyebrow. "And what did you find when you arrived?" Amanda's voice tightened. "Ronald arranged everything for Mom's promotion. They planned it so they could be together. The family back home disposed of everything except photos, which we got later. When we were unpacking, Miranda and I found the adoption papers. Ronald explained that they were getting married and adopting us. He said that's why our dad wrote us out of his life." Helen absorbed the story. "I believe you, Amanda. I've heard much of this from the family. I also know that the school district gave Adelia your school record so you could register when you moved." Amanda nodded, anger and disbelief in her eyes. "Now the truth is coming out with Adelia being found." Helen nodded. "I've recorded our conversation. Once I send it to the FBI and your father, we'll grab an early dinner. Meanwhile, take a look at these statements," she said, handing Amanda notarized documents. "If your mom lied to you about your father, could she be lying about Ronald too?" Helen stepped into another room to forward the conversation, keeping an eye on Amanda from the doorway. Amanda sat quietly, reading through the statements, but not reaching out to anyone. Helen sent the conversation to John, then his civil lawyer, as Amanda's statement was incredibly damaging. Finally, she forwarded it to the FBI. Just as Helen was about to return to Amanda, John texted her, "I'll be there waiting for you." "Thank you," she replied, a sense of finality in her words. After a moment of watching Amanda, Helen returned to her. "Aunt Helen, do you have any idea why Mom told the family Dad was mistreating us?" Amanda asked softly, her voice tinged with confusion. Helen sighed before responding. "Your father was never well liked by the family, and your mother knew that. She probably used those accusations to justify her sudden disappearance. She also knew your father would search for you, and he did. He even tried to sue Bank of America to get your mother's whereabouts, though he lost in appeals." Helen paused, gathering her thoughts. "We didn't know about her marriage or the name change until your photo appeared in the paper. That's when your mom contacted the family in a failed attempt to cover up her mess. For 5 years, your dad's been a hunted man because of her. We almost lost him twice." Amanda's face tightened with concern. "How's my dad really doing?" Helen's expression softened. "He keeps to himself. He's lost a lot of weight, and the stress has turned most of his hair white. His Facebook was flooded with hate and threats, so he had to shut it down, even removing his name from the company page. They tried to destroy his business and life. He's learned to trust very few. He used to be outgoing, but now he's quiet and reserved. He's free, but not really. There are still people who want revenge." Amanda absorbed this in silence. "Does he have a girlfriend?" she asked, her voice almost hesitant. Helen's gaze became firm. "After what your mother did to him, would you date him?" she replied, heavy with the question. "He's spent 5 years defending himself against lies, unable to prove the truth." Amanda paused, then spoke softly. "Every time he tried to defend himself, it only made things worse. Their minds were made up. He was forced to walk alone." She took a shaky breath. "Our disappearance made it worse, gave her accusations more weight. Adelia and Ronald planned it perfectly. The only one who paid the price was Dad." Her voice cracked. "I feared he would damage himself." Helen's face softened, tears beginning to form. "Let's get something to eat," she suggested gently, changing the subject. As they walked toward the car, Amanda paused and turned to Helen. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For what?" Helen asked, surprised. "For standing by and loving my dad all these years," Amanda replied, her eyes filled with gratitude. Helen's eyes welled up, and the tears flowed freely. Amanda moved to comfort her. At Ruby Tuesdays, I sat in my car, watching for them to arrive. My emotions were a mess, trying to figure out what to say to my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in over 5 years. I'd replayed Helen's conversation with Amanda in my mind, believing it, but still struggling to accept it. When I saw them walk toward the door, my hands shook so badly I could hardly light my cigarette. Everything had changed. Amanda had grown into a beautiful woman. I saw so much of my own mother in her. It saddened me, remembering how my family had disowned me after my wife and daughters disappeared. After finishing my smoke, I turned off the car and prepared for the shortest yet longest walk of my life. The waitress who had served me a few weeks ago was now the hostess. She greeted me immediately. "Amanda's here," she said. I nodded and asked her to seat them in the back. "I'll take her to the booth," she said, "but she'll have her back to us when we approach." When we reached the booth, Helen saw me immediately and smiled. I walked up, sat beside her, and grabbed her hand for support. For the first time in over 5 years, I looked directly into my daughter's bright blue eyes. We just stared at each other, tears starting to fall. Sometimes words fail in moments like this. I had asked the hostess to bring us a bottle of house wine. When it arrived, the waitress said nothing. After pouring the first glasses, she left us alone. Amanda looked at me, surprised by how much I had changed. I'd lost at least 40 pounds. My face looked thinner and older, with my hair now silvery white. Many women would pay for that look at my age. Amanda stood up, and I followed. We met at the edge of the table and embraced in a tight hug. She cried out, "Dad!" I responded softly. Amma, my old nickname for her. In that moment, we both knew everything had changed. After calming down, we ordered food. Amanda seemed surprised by how differently I ate. Once a meat and potatoes man, I now ordered a catfish platter with the unlimited salad bar, refilling my plate multiple times. As Helen joined me at the salad bar, Amanda took the opportunity to speak privately. "Helen loves you, Dad, probably more than I do," Amanda said softly. "She grilled me like a drill sergeant before deciding I was honest. She wasn't going to let me hurt you again?" I sighed, regret weighing heavy on my voice. For 5 years, I didn't have a life to offer anyone. If a body had turned up, they would have thrown me in jail. Everyone thought I'd liquidated the three of you." Amanda nodded, understanding. "I know." Taking a deep breath, I continued. 3 years ago, after the second hospital stay from being attacked, I rewrote my will and left everything to Helen. I was ready to end it, but she brought me back from the edge." Helen returned and saw Amanda crying again. "What now?" she asked. "Just told her about the will and how you saved me," I replied. Now I had both women in tears. After lunch, we returned the rental car and drove to my home at Ryder Lake. Amanda was awestruck by the house, a spacious, open-plan home overlooking the lake with a covered breezeway and a stunning view. Amanda declined my offer to carry her luggage upstairs, likely wanting to give Helen and me some privacy. Once alone, Helen asked, "Why didn't you tell me sooner how you felt?" "I couldn't," I admitted. "I didn't know if a body would show up. Not knowing was worse than knowing. Now that I'm free from that shadow, I can finally offer you a future." Helen smiled warmly. "I guess I'll put my house up for sale because there's no way I'll let you sell this place." I grinned, but when Amanda caught us kissing, I felt a pang of guilt. Still, we laughed it off, and the three of us sat down to catch up. I learned Amanda was working a dead-end job while pursuing her MBA online. She wasn't dating seriously. "Why not work with us?" I suggested. "We need fresh ideas, and you'd be a perfect fit. Start in a junior role, and we'll go from there." Amanda's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" Helen nodded. "We'd start you at $45,000 a year." Amanda smiled through her tears. "Wow, I guess I'll need a place to live." "Stay here," I said. "There's plenty of room. But don't forget, chores still apply," I teased. Amanda laughed. "Why, Dad? You've always been a big part of my life," I replied. Amanda decided to fly back to PAC and return within the week. As we added phone numbers to our contact list, she got a text from Miranda. "Finally got my phone back. The FBI is holding me until they confirm the DNA test proves Ronald Peterson isn't my father. They showed me how the adoption papers were proven forged. I can't call but can text." Amanda replied, "I'm flying back tomorrow to PAC, moving home and joining Dad's firm. His number is under Sir." Miranda texted back, "Bring my laptop and phone. Leave the rest. Get a copy of today's US Today. Call me when you can." Helen followed me onto the patio. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Overwhelmed," I admitted, pulling her into a hug. Helen suggested taking Amanda to her place to gather some clothes, giving me time to reflect. I shared the gate code and house keys for copies. While they were gone, I let years of pent-up emotion pour out. It felt like a dam had burst. When they returned 2 hours later, I was smiling. They were too. I was on the patio grilling steaks with baked potatoes in the oven and a salad ready. Watching Helen and Amanda chat as they carried bags inside, I realized this was the beginning of a new chapter. After so much loss, we were finally moving forward, together. Late into a dinner, I found out that Amanda's flight was scheduled for 8 a.m. Sunday. Helen and I were planning to move more of her things the next day. I couldn't help but smile as I watched the girls eat more than usual. Afterward, we sat with coffee when my phone rang. The only one who had this number outside of our group was the FBI. I picked up and said, "Hello, Mr. Masters, it's Doug Drysdale." "Just a quick update," Doug began. "The DNA results are in, and it's confirmed you are Miranda's father. We got the results about 2 hours ago and told her. She wants to come home, so we've got her landing in Cape at 7:30 Monday morning." "That's fantastic," I said. "Helen and I will be there to pick her up." "Great. We figured Amanda had headed your way last night. Also, let her know her sister did see the article online," Doug added. By the way, when we broke the news to Ronald Peterson, he was crushed. Adelia had him convinced that Miranda was his. It doesn't change anything, though. He's still facing a long sentence. "Just one question?" I asked. "What will be my daughter's legal names now?" "They'll be Masters," Doug replied. "We got the court ruling on Friday morning. A copy of the federal court decision will be sent to your office on Monday, and that will allow you to change their IDs." With that, he ended the call. I could barely hold it together. The tears just started flowing. I couldn't speak, and both Helen and Amanda noticed, looking concerned. Fortunately, I pulled myself together quickly. "Miranda will be at the airport at 7:30 Monday," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "The DNA test confirmed she's mine. When we told Ronald Peterson, he was devastated. Adelia had him thinking she was his." "I knew it," Helen whispered. I turned to Amanda. "Did Adelia ever tell anyone the truth?" Amanda's expression grew serious. "I've got some bad news. You'll need to change your last name back to Masters. The court ruled you're adoption invalid. She threw her arms around me, sobbing. Peterson never felt right. We saw Amanda off as she headed back to New York to get her things. Afterward, Helen and I met her two brothers and their wives, plus Jackson, to move some of the furniture Helen wanted out of her house. Since I only had two of the bedrooms set up, there was plenty of room to store her stuff. The whole story was in the Sunday edition of Southeast Missourian. We met for breakfast at Hickory House, and everyone noticed the happiness on Helen's face. Her sisters-in-law joked that with Helen's cooking, I'd gained some weight in 6 months. The restaurant owner, an old friend, smiled and said, "Congrats, John. Breakfast's on me." We finished the move in one long day. Helen's sisters-in-law were clearly impressed with her new home. We offered to take them all out for dinner, but they declined, saying they'd prefer to come over for our first housewarming party instead. We arrived at the airport at 7:15 Monday morning, just in case the flight was early. Helen had let the necessary people know we wouldn't be in that day, and the response was, "We figured that," from the Sunday paper. I saw Miranda coming down the steps of the small plane heading towards me. She was dressed in jeans and a tank top, and I almost didn't recognize her. The last time I saw her, she was a little girl with pigtails. Now she was a beautiful young woman walking toward me. As soon as she saw me, she ran straight at me. The sliding doors opened, and she rushed in. "Daddy!" she cried, leaping into my arms. Both of us were overwhelmed with emotion. We didn't care about the cameras. I heard Helen speaking to a reporter from KVO's 12 news station saying, "That's John Masters, and that's his youngest daughter, who half the town thought he had liquidated. Turns out they were abducted 5 years ago. The FBI has her mother and her partner in custody. This is the first time they've seen each other in over 5 years." We turned to the reporter, and Miranda spoke up. "I'm Miranda Masters. That's my father, John Masters. 5 years ago, my mother's family helped abduct us. They spread lies about our dad, claiming he misused us, but none of that was true. My mom's family may be involved in terrible things, but my dad never did that. Anyone who comes after him now will have to go through my sister and me. We are family, and we stand together. My mom told us when she divorced him that he got what he deserved. None of us deserved what she put us through. To me, he's not just my father. He's the most honest man I know." I introduced Miranda to Helen. Miranda hugged her and said, "Amanda and I talked a lot yesterday. We've learned a lot. It turns out our mom lied to Ronald just as much as she did to Dad. She craved attention so badly that she nearly destroyed 5 lives. We know you and Dad are planning to marry, and as far as Amanda and I are concerned, we want to forget the Helen part." "Okay, Mom?" Helen teared up. "You couldn't have said it better, Miranda." Miranda smiled at her. "Helen, I'll agree to that if you promise to be one of my bridesmaids." "How about we go grab some breakfast?" I suggested. Miranda nodded. "Can we go to Denny's? Are they still open?" "They are, but Huddle House is closer and serves the same kind of food," I said. "Is that okay?" It was, and I was surprised by how much Miranda could eat. Watching her, I thought it might actually be cheaper to send her to a boarding school. It was still hard to believe I had a life again. My 2 daughters were back in my world in a way I'd never imagined. My house no longer felt like a house. It finally felt like home. Later, while we were shopping at Macy's, I deliberately wandered off. I couldn't bear listening to the girls talk about underwear and other personal stuff. By the time they realized I'd slipped away, I was almost back. Helen asked where I'd gone, and I said, "Just the washroom." I found myself stuck watching Miranda try on clothes. For some reason, she was looking for my approval. Honestly, I thought she'd look great in anything, but she insisted on hearing my thoughts. $300 later, we walked out with 2 shopping bags. Back at the house, Helen proudly showed Miranda the 4 bedrooms upstairs that were now fully furnished. Miranda seemed to really like the room that had Helen's old master bedroom set, which made Helen beam with happiness. Later, we sat on the patio, trying to enjoy the coolness before the afternoon heat kicked in. The women sipped on iced tea while I relaxed with a cold beer. After a while, I stood up, walked over to Helen, and pulled a small box from my pocket. Dropping to one knee, I caught her off guard. "Since I haven't asked you properly," I said, opening the box with the 3-ring set inside, "will you marry me once my divorce is finalized?" "Yes, of course," she replied, her eyes welling up with tears. Miranda snapped a picture of the moment and immediately texted it to Amanda. Yes, it fits. I had gotten Helen's ring size from her brother, so it was a pleasant surprise that the ring fit perfectly. About half an hour later, Helen's phone rang, and both Miranda and I exchanged worried glances when we saw her tear up unexpectedly. She handed me the phone, and as soon as I heard Amanda's voice, I knew what was going on. It was my eldest daughter calling. "Congrats, Dad," Amanda said, her voice crackling slightly over the line. "Are you on the road yet?" "I left at 4 yesterday," she continued. "Been driving nonstop since then. It's a lot quieter at night, and the cops aren't as active. I was cruising just over 100, so the miles flew by." "Tell my sister I got her stuff," I replied. "I will," Amanda said. "How much farther?" I asked her what time it was on her end. "About 2 p.m. Why?" "I need you to guide me in," she answered. "I just got off the off-ramp at Cape." I sent her the directions, and I couldn't decide whether I should feel proud or worried. It looked like she had driven nearly 24 hours straight. As the sound of a car approaching the driveway reached our ears, both girls rushed to the door to greet Amanda. When she stepped out of the car, she looked tired, but otherwise fine. And then it hit me hard. I was seeing all 3 of my girls together. The first thing Amanda did was check out Helen's engagement ring. At that moment, the house phone rang, and I rushed to answer it. "John, we've been slammed today," Chris said. "Some of the clients we lost because of the rumors are coming back, and we've got a ton of new ones calling in. A lot of them are from out of state. If this keeps up, we're going to need more staff, and we need them now." "My daughter, Amanda, will be starting as a junior next week," I told him. "She's green, but she's aiming for an MBA. "Can I have her on my team?" Chris asked. "It'll be long hours, but she'll learn fast." "Sure," I agreed. Chris Acker was a go-getter. I hired him right after he graduated at the top of his class. Like all of us, he had to learn the hard way, but with time, he had more than proven himself. He quickly realized that business theory didn't always work in the real world, and he wasn't afraid to admit it. He taught his team by doing. If someone made a mistake, he would step in, explain where they went wrong, and make sure they understood. In his eyes, the only wrong question was the one you didn't ask. "Chris, Helen and I will be taking the rest of the week off," I said. "We've got a lot to deal with. Our engagement, the girls coming home, and a few legal matters to clear up, including getting Miranda enrolled in school." "Engaged? Wow, that's great news," Chris said. "By the way, we got a courier letter from the FBI. Can you swing by and pick it up at 5? "Thanks for the reminder," I replied. "I'll be there." At 4:30, we headed into town. We had decided to have our first official family meal at Red Lobster, a place the girls had chosen. I pulled up in front of the office and asked Amanda if she wanted to check out where she'd be working. "Sure," she said, so we all went inside. When we entered, the receptionist greeted us and led us to the largest conference room. There, we found a big cake and a banner that read, "Congratulations." Amanda met her new boss, and everyone was introduced to my new family. It didn't go unnoticed that both my daughters were already calling Helen Mom. We finally made it to the restaurant around 6:30, just in time for their annual all-you-can-eat shrimp special. My daughters lost count after 140 shrimp and couldn't believe I was now eating raw lemons, like they were oranges. That night, as we sat together, we went over the court ruling. The first thing I noticed was that the document looked like something you could easily create on LegalZoom.com, no lawyer required. The second point was that an expert had concluded that the signature of John Allen Masters had been traced over. The ink breaks weren't consistent with someone's natural signature flow, and there were discrepancies in every instance. The third glaring detail was that I had never used my full middle name when signing anything. The final clue was that the signature on the document had been dated after they had left Missouri. On the second page, the court ruled that Amanda Peterson and Miranda Peterson were never their legal names. In the eyes of the law, they were and always had been Amanda Masters and Miranda Masters. As a result, all official records would be changed to reflect that. The week was spent untangling legal issues. First, we went to the Social Security office, then to the state attorney's office to restore Amanda and Miranda's birth certificates to their original names, and finally to the DMV for new driver's licenses. For me, the most satisfying moment was sitting across from the school principal, who, 5 years ago, had dismissed me so coldly as I registered Miranda for 11th grade. On Thursday, I picked up new cell phones for the girls. Friday morning, Helen and I took Amanda and Miranda to the Ford dealership in Jackson. With Helen's approval, I traded in her car along with Amanda's old one. Both ladies drove home brand new 2019 Ford Escapes on lease-to-own plans through my company. I also handed Amanda a check for the trade-in value credited to our down payment. Later that day, my divorce lawyer called. For the first time in 5 years, my daughters and I were scheduled to attend court on Monday at 1 p.m. I asked Helen if she'd come with us. "Damn right," she replied. In court, we sat before Judge Donald McDonald, while Adelia appeared on a monitor. Without her usual polish, she looked haggard, and the orange jumpsuit did her no favors. The judge turned to her lawyer. "Does your client have anything to say about the contempt charge?" Her lawyer responded weakly. "She claims she didn't understand she needed to be in court today." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Did you remind her repeatedly during the settlement discussions?" "Yes," the lawyer admitted. "Then are you incompetent enough to believe her?" The judge retorted. "No," the lawyer muttered. "How does your client plead?" "No contest," the lawyer said. The judge's tone turned icy. "I sentence her to 5 years to be served consecutively with any federal time." The lawyer protested. "Your Honor, isn't that extreme?" "Not in my view," the judge replied coldly. "Though she can appeal," the judge continued. "As for the divorce, it is granted in favor of Mr. Masters. All remaining marital assets are forfeited to him, as she abandoned her minor daughters when she left the state." Turning to my lawyer, he added, "Draft the divorce decree, including a waiver for the waiting period. I think your client has waited long enough." "My client has one final request," my lawyer interjected. "He recently got engaged to Miss Helen Beard and would like you to officiate their civil ceremony." Helen and the girls gasped in delight as I smiled knowingly. My lawyer and I had planned for this possibility. The judge beamed. "It would be my honor. Congratulations to both of you. Long overdue." Adelia's shocked face on the monitor was priceless. It seemed she had expected a slap on the wrist, not 5 years in prison or news of my engagement to her cousin. The judge adjourned court with a bang of the gavel, then approached to shake my hand. I introduced him to Helen and the girls formally. As we left, he grinned. "John, we need to go fly fishing soon before the heat gets unbearable." Outside, the excitement from the 3 most important women in my life was overwhelming. After years of silence, their chatter was deafening, but joyful. Then I saw a couple quietly slipping away. It was my parents. Their presence hit me hard. My father's parting words echoed, "Forgiveness is easy, forgetting is not." At home, wedding planning took over. Helen listed her house for sale, Amanda fit in seamlessly at work, and Miranda reconnected with old friends. Masters Consulting was swamped with new clients, including 2 corporations needing complete restructuring. Amanda amazed us all by spotting overlooked issues costing a client millions in potential sales. Within 3 weeks, she turned it around, boosting their revenue significantly. Watching her succeed made me proud. It felt like life was finally coming back together. One night, Helen and I were lying in bed, just cuddling. She was adjusting to being a mom again, and I was getting used to being a dad. "You know, dear, my biological clock is ticking," Helen said, gazing at me with those dreamy eyes. "How long should we wait before trying for 1 or 2 of our own?" I hadn't really thought about it, but after everything Helen had been through with me, I knew I couldn't refuse. "Let me put it this way," I replied. "As long as you're not showing in our wedding pictures, I'll leave it up to you." I don't think I need to explain why neither of us got much sleep that night. We exchanged vows on Mother's Day. Amanda was the maid of honor. Miranda and another niece were maids of honor. Chris Acker was my best man, and my nephews were ushers. It was a small ceremony in our backyard with the lake as the backdrop. Helen's brothers had prepared the yard, and the judge married us beneath a spring flower arbor. The men wore blue jeans, cowboy hats, and matching boots. The women went all out. Helen wore a traditional white gown, and her bridesmaids wore yellow dresses. Her family provided a fantastic barbecue spread, and our patio became a lively dance floor with live music. Life moved forward. Adelia and Ronald's criminal trial was underway, and Ronald had filed for divorce. My civil lawyer was negotiating with their lawyers and Bank of America's legal team. As Father's Day approached, I knew my wife and daughters were planning something, but I had no idea what. On Father's Day, Helen and I were up at dawn fishing on the lake. The fish were biting, and we reached our limit in less than an hour. Just before we headed back, Helen handed me a card. Inside it read, "Happy Father's Day, Daddy. We're pregnant, and it's a boy." I was so excited. I flipped the canoe, and we lost everything, our fishing poles and tackle box. We ended up drenched, but the girls had already been told, and they thought it was hilarious. Things settled down, but the real change came when our son was born. He arrived screaming, weighing 7 pounds. When I called my mom to tell her, she rushed to the hospital. I led her straight to Helen, who was holding our son. "His name is Colin Richard," I said. My mother broke down. Colin Richard was her grandfather's name. As for my father and me, we still haven't spoken. He would need to come to me, and as of now, he hasn't. But each new day brings progress, and life goes on. Before Tom and Alice's marriage became a routine of work and trust, their relationship had begun with the spark of ambition and shared passion for engineering. They met in graduate school, both striving to be the best in their fields. Tom was known for his technical precision, a man of few words but deep focus. Alice, on the other hand, was vibrant and outspoken, often leading team projects with her natural charisma. Their shared dedication to their studies and the long hours spent in the lab gradually brought them together. During those early years, their relationship was marked by intellectual connection and a mutual respect for each other's talents. They would often stay late working on complex engineering problems, challenging each other to find solutions. These intense sessions didn't just forge a professional bond, but also led to a deep emotional connection. Tom admired Alice's drive, and Alice found Tom's quiet confidence and meticulous nature deeply reassuring. By the time they graduated, they were not just colleagues, but partners in every sense. Their decision to marry came almost as naturally as their partnership in school. It wasn't a grand romantic proposal, but a mutual understanding that they worked well together, personally and professionally. Both of them saw marriage as the next logical step in their shared journey. They envisioned building a life where their careers would grow in tandem, pushing each other to new heights. The early years of their marriage were focused on their careers, with long hours spent in the office or on site at various projects. It was a relationship based on mutual ambition, a shared drive to succeed in a demanding field. However, as their careers took off, the nature of their relationship subtly began to shift. Alice, being more outgoing and adaptable, started to gain recognition faster than Tom. She was promoted to lead major projects, which required more travel and public engagement. Tom, still dedicated but more reserved, preferred the technical side of engineering, content with his steady role. The balance of their relationship shifted as Alice's career accelerated and Tom's remained more stable. As Alice became more involved in high-profile projects, her schedule grew unpredictable. The late nights and business trips became more frequent, and though they still shared a bond, there was less time for the quiet, intellectual connection they once had. Tom, trusting and supportive, saw these changes as a natural progression in their careers. He continued to believe in the strength of their relationship, not realizing that the emotional distance between them was slowly widening. Looking back, Tom could see that the seeds of their future troubles had been planted in those early days. What had begun as a partnership of equals had gradually shifted into something more unbalanced, with Alice's career and ambitions overshadowing the bond they had once shared. But Tom, ever the logical thinker, brushed aside any concerns, trusting that their shared history and respect would keep them together. Tom had always lived a life of carefully planned routines. As an engineer, he took pride in being precise and organized, both at work and in his personal life. Married for 6 years, he believed his relationship with Alice, who was also an engineer, was solid. Their marriage wasn't marked by grand romantic gestures, but it was based on mutual respect and shared values of honesty and hard work. Alice's career had been progressing steadily, often requiring her to travel for important corporate projects. Tom, always supportive, trusted her completely, and never questioned her late nights or business trips. However, over the last few months, Tom had started to notice small seeds of doubt creeping in. Alice seemed more distant, and her travel schedule became more frequent and less predictable. Though Tom attributed it to her growing work responsibilities, a nagging feeling occasionally hit him when she didn't call after landing or stayed out late with colleagues. Yet, Tom brushed off these feelings as paranoia. After all, they were both logical thinkers, and he had no reason to believe Alice would stray from the life they had built together. One day, Tom was gathering fresh test data, a task he found tedious and exhausting. It was a necessary part of the work he and his team had been doing to develop the test vehicle over the past month. Whether he liked it or not, Tom had to compile and analyze the data. His phone buzzed with a notification, briefly flashing a message, but he ignored it at first. Several minutes passed before he took a break and checked his phone. The text was from an unknown number, local but unfamiliar. Initially, he thought about deleting it as spam, but reconsidered, thinking it might be from someone on his team whose number he hadn't saved. He clicked on the message, and what he saw confused him at first. A sexual image appeared on his phone, an explicit photo. He read the accompanying message carefully. "You still have time at Bradley's 18." He reread it, chuckling slightly, thinking it was a case of a wrong number, but just as he was about to delete it, he took another look at the photo, and his heart stopped. There, barely noticeable at first, was a small mole on the woman's left leg. That tiny mole belonged to Alice, his wife of 6 years. In disbelief, Tom stared at the photo, hoping to find something that would prove him wrong. But the more he looked, the more convinced he became that this was indeed an incriminating image of Alice. He read the message again. Bradley's was a local bar, but it wasn't one Alice had ever mentioned. It was in the next town over. Why was she at Bradley's at 6 p.m. when she was supposed to be on her way to Boston for a big proposal? Her team had flown in earlier that day, preparing for a presentation scheduled for Monday. Alice was one of the team leaders, so of course she had to be there for the preparations. It was 5:15 p.m. Alice was supposed to have landed in Boston at 4:30. She usually called once she landed, but Tom figured she was likely busy gathering the team and their gear, heading to the hotel. He considered calling her, but decided to respond to the mysterious message first. Nothing clever, just what was expected. "Who is this? Where did you get this photo? Should I meet you at Bradley's?" He began packing his things for the day and made up his mind to go to Bradley's. He needed answers. He texted Alice, "How was the flight? I'm going to grab something to eat. Call me when you're free." His plan was to lay low and figure out what was going on. As he was walking to his car, his phone beeped again. Thinking it was Alice, he checked, but it was another message from the unknown sender. "I'll be there, but I'm sure you'll find someone more interesting than me." His head started spinning. He pulled up maps on his phone and quickly walked to his car. It was a 30-minute drive to Bradley's, and it was now 5:40 p.m., meaning he would arrive just after 6. He had no idea how time-sensitive this situation was, so he decided to head straight there and hope he arrived in time to confront whoever had sent the messages. As he drove, his phone rang again. This time, it was Alice. "Crazy day with the team. I'll call you before bed. Love you." Tom didn't think much of it. Their conversation could wait. He was far more focused on the meeting at Bradley's and how this stranger had obtained such personal information about his wife. His heart pounded as he pulled into the parking lot at 6:12 p.m. The sender hadn't given any specific details on who he was supposed to meet, so Tom assumed that whoever wanted to meet him knew who he was and would make contact. But the line about someone more interesting worried him the most. The sender clearly knew something Tom didn't, and it felt like a trap. But there was no other way to figure it out. The photograph had unsettled him deeply. He trusted Alice fully, and their relationship had been great. At least, that's what he thought. But now, there was only one way for someone to have gotten that picture of his wife. And in 5 minutes, he was going to find out. The weight of what might be the final answer filled him with dread. He stepped inside, scanning the dimly lit pub. Unfamiliar with the place, he paused by the door to survey the scene. In front of him was a large dining area, and to the left, a bar. He walked over to the bar, found a seat at the far end, and sat down. The bartender, just finishing up with a well-dressed customer, approached Tom to take his order. Tom asked for a draft beer and turned to observe the dining area. His gaze locked onto a man who had just placed his order and was crossing the room toward a table filled with smiling people. Then, Tom saw exactly what the mysterious messages had been hinting at. Alice was sitting at the table, accepting a drink from the well-dressed man, smiling and looking stunning in a little black dress and pearls. He was running on autopilot. Without hesitation, he stood up and walked straight to the table where Alice was sitting. He was just 2 steps away when she noticed him, her expression shifting from a bright smile to one of fear. Tom didn't stop. He reached the table, grabbed the well-dressed man by the hair with his left hand, yanking him back sharply. The man dropped his drinks and stumbled, crying out in pain as Tom pulled him past. Tom released his grip and prepared to punch, but the man's backward fall was too quick, sending him to the floor before Tom could land a blow. Tom took a step forward and recognized him. "Don't get up," Pete said. "I'm serious." Pete, who had been dressed sharply just moments before, now lay at Tom's feet in a disheveled, drink-soaked heap. He nodded, not daring to move or speak. Tom glanced back at Alice. The whole table sat in stunned silence. He recognized several faces, members of Alice's team who had been over to his house for meals and gatherings. Maybe loyalty to the team outweighed loyalty to a spouse, he thought. But someone here knew the truth, and had chosen to tell him. He considered finding out who, but only for a moment, then decided it didn't matter. "I'm going home. If you want any chance of saving our marriage, you'll come home now," Tom said. Alice nodded and began to stand, but he raised his hand. "Give me a minute to leave first." Before walking out, he turned to Betty Wilson, seated next to Bob Thornton. "Betty, Bill thinks you're in Boston too." "Bob? Does Hannah know about this? They both averted their eyes, unable to meet his gaze or answer the question. Is the whole team really sleeping with each other? He wondered. Unfortunately, he now knew at least one of them was. The drive home was a blur, and Tom found himself in his driveway without remembering how he got there. Almost automatically, he went inside, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat down in the living room. He knew Bill Wilson and Hannah Thornton, but he didn't recognize the other two couples. 4 couples total. He thought about calling Bob or Hannah, but decided he didn't want to talk. He didn't know much, but one thing was clear. Betty and Bob had been lying. He decided to text them instead. He quickly sent a message to both. Just heard from Alice. Who? Looks like the team's travel plans have changed. Better check in for updates. Now they knew something had gone wrong. Whether they chose to look into it further was up to them. At least Tom's conscience was clear. About 20 minutes later, he heard the garage door open as Alice pulled in. He sat in the living room, waiting. She entered, still wearing her little black dress, but without shoes or jewelry. She seemed calm as she sat down across from him on the sofa. Tom remained silent, waiting for her to speak. He understood the power of silence in any discussion and intended to hold it as long as needed. It didn't take long. Alice seemed ready to burst. "It's not what you think," she began. He raised his hand to stop her. "You have no idea what I'm thinking after what I saw tonight," Tom replied. "I don't need much of an explanation. We're both engineers. You know as well as I do that there's no single objective answer to anything. Why? That's just an excuse to explain bad outcomes. So I won't even ask why. Let's start with something simpler. How long has this been going on? How many times? How often? Do our friends know? Besides those other people at the table, am I known as the fool among your colleagues and friends?" "No, Tom, it's not like that at all," Alice said. "We're a team. Our travel plans got disrupted, and instead of going home and leaving again tomorrow, Pete suggested we stay in town and rest before the next trip. I didn't see the whole team there. Where was everyone else?" "Some of them decided to stay home one more night and meet us at the airport tomorrow," she admitted. "But you lied to me. You seem pretty close to Pete. Is there something between the star engineer and the prodigy program manager that you'd like to tell me about?" "Well, for one thing, Pete is fine, and he convinced the owners of Bradley's not to press charges," she said in an upbeat tone. Tom's eyes widened in disbelief at her sense of loyalty. "I don't care about your boyfriend. If that idiot hadn't tripped over his own feet, I would have broken his nose. And by the way, I'm not done with him yet." "Do you love him?" Tom asked, and Alice fell silent for a moment. He could see her trying to gather her thoughts. Yes, silence was a powerful tool, and his mind raced to fill the emptiness her silence left behind. The quiet continued to hang in the air, and things weren't looking promising. "He's not my boyfriend. Nothing happened. Yes, I should have told you about the change in travel plans, but it seemed so minor. Whether I was in the city or in Boston didn't matter. You weren't expecting me, and I was still focused on the team. All we did was have dinner before heading to our rooms. There was no reason for you to act the way you did. He just brought drinks. You completely humiliated me in front of my team." Alice was now in full defense mode, trying to act like Tom's reaction was the real issue. He calmly picked up his phone, pulled up a message, and slid it across the coffee table toward her. From her expression, Tom knew she remembered the photo and everything that came with it. There was no denying it now. She dropped the pretense and started again. Tom grabbed his phone, opened the voice recording app, and slipped it into his shirt pocket. "Tom, our team," she hesitated. "We're very close-knit in many ways, most of us." She paused briefly, then continued. "There's a small group of us that meets regularly. Bradley had them all together. We were the ones bearing the brunt of the work to prepare the proposal. You know how much time I spent on that? I don't know how it started. It was sometime after Pete took over as lead. We worked closely, and I was attracted to him. And it just happened," Alice said. "No," Tom interrupted. "Sex doesn't just happen. You have to make a lot of choices, like taking off your clothes. We both know that, so don't insult me." She paused again. "So, almost 6 months." He answered one of his own questions. "That's when Pete signed the contract, right?" She nodded. "The team," Tom began again. "All of you," he let the thought trail off. "Are you all involved?" She nodded again. "Yes," Alice said. "It was good for building trust in team dynamics." "Is that how Pete convinced you to start AZEK's team at work?" Tom asked sarcastically. "Now you're being rude," Alice snapped. "It's much more than that. I feel more connected to Pete and my team than ever before." Alice's bravado was back in full force. Tom had a sinking feeling that nothing good was going to come from this. "Unfortunately, you'll be seeing some changes on your team," Tom said. "What did you do?" Alice gasped. "Tom, if you tell anyone else, it's going to ruin more lives. Let them decide for themselves. We have to accept it. But I can't stay silent and be complicit, Alice," he replied calmly. "I like Bob and Hannah," he added. "A lot more than Betty and Bill. Anyway, I sent them a message saying my travel plans had changed. How your friends explain things to their spouses and how those spouses react is entirely up to them. I can sleep soundly with that decision." "Tom, we have the most productive team in Cramerica Inc. as history," she almost yelled. "And you benefited too. Just because we had team meetings on Wednesdays doesn't mean you missed out. I never turned you away. You had access to me whenever you wanted. So I had some fun with the team a little earlier and you never even noticed. That photo you showed me. Do you want to know the story behind it?" she mocked. "So now, just because you know, and just because your fragile ego is bruised, you want to undermine everything my team and I have accomplished?" Alice hissed, her anger rising. It excited me. Tom's heart raced as Alice continued defending her team and their actions. He was growing angrier too. On the drive home from Bradley's, he had briefly thought that if it had just been a one-time thing with Pete, maybe he could forgive her. But that thought had long since died a quick pass away. He didn't need to hear anything more, and he didn't want to. But Alice kept going. "No, sir, you're not getting away with this. You need to text Bob and Hannah and tell them you heard from me, that we're stuck in Atlanta but have flights booked for the morning. That's the story Betty and Bill are using, and you're going to back them up, so help me," she shouted. "There are tens of millions on this deal, and your little grievances don't mean a damn thing. Send the message, and then we'll discuss what happens next." "What next?" Tom shouted. "There is no next. Are you kidding me? You, your twisted team, and your leader Pete can do whatever you want. We're done. I'll find a lawyer this week and handle everything. A simple 50-50 split. You keep your pension, I keep mine," Tom said firmly. "Leave. You've got reservations in the city. Go to Boston, get your next big win for yourself and your team." "Tom, please send those messages," Alice said, her tone softening, pleading. "If we lose Betty or Bill before the presentation, the company could lose millions. You and I, we could lose tens, maybe hundreds of thousands in commissions and bonuses. Just think about what we could do with that money, just you and me. Forget about this misunderstanding." "Please, Tom," she continued, "don't let some baseless fears about casual Zex ruin this. Pete says I'm on the fast track to becoming CEO. I just need to keep doing what we're doing for a few more years. Don't you want that for me? For us? Alice, just go away." Tom barely got the words out before something struck him hard in the back, knocking the wind out of him as he collapsed to the floor with a knee pressing into his back. "Don't hurt him," Alice said. "Too much," she added. "So, you're still debating whether my nose was really broken, huh?" Pete said, leaning down, his face inches from Tom's as he lay pinned on the floor. "Alice must have planted a bug on me," Tom thought. "Now I know which side she's really on. Let's see whose nose gets broken next." Pete grinned. "Take his phone and send the text from him. We don't have time for this crap." Someone pulled him up from the floor. Just one person. Tom deliberately pretended to resist, forcing the guy behind him to use more strength to lift him. This gave Tom useful information. His opponent was a weak office worker, already out of breath from the effort it took to get Tom on his feet. Catching his breath after being knocked around, Tom got back in the game. Unlike Pete and his team of well-dressed salesmen, Tom's team worked hands-on with the 160th SOAR, Special Operations Aviation Regiment unit, out of Fort Campbell, California. His group of engineers wasn't on the same level as those soldiers, but after spending time with the crews during test missions, they had earned the chance to assist with the challenging Pillsbury test, guided by some tough operators who flew missions in aircraft modified specifically by Tom's team. When these guys showed up, it meant serious business. If they were at your door, your days were numbered. Tom and his crew developed the equipment needed for entering dangerous zones, and, more importantly, getting out of them. Tom's team took pride in knowing their modifications helped complete missions and ensured everyone made it home safely. The 160th and their elite passengers greatly appreciated the effort Tom's engineers put into making sure their gear worked flawlessly. The most intimidating of the bunch was Staff Sergeant Troy Baker, a name well known to those in his world. From low-ranking soldiers to high-ranking officers, everyone gave him the respect he'd earned by leading his men on missions across the globe. Baker was renowned for his commitment to never leaving anyone behind, a reputation solidified during a mission in Colombia. "Stay close," Staff Sergeant Baker had told the young lieutenant leading the platoon. It was the lieutenant's first mission, and Baker thought he was doing well for a rookie. But when FARC rebels ambushed their team, the situation turned deadly. After they fought off the attack, Baker noticed the lieutenant lying on the ground, bleeding from a head wound. "He's unconscious," the medic said, checking his vitals. Baker crouched down and hoisted the lieutenant into a fireman's carry. "He's gone," the medic repeated. "Maybe," Baker replied, "but he's still coming home with us." The medic stared at him, incredulous. They still had 5 more treks through dense jungle to reach the landing zone. Getting themselves back was already a challenge, let alone while carrying a body. Baker caught the medic's worried look. "I'd do the same for you, Billy," Baker said. "Stick close, in case I need you." What happened next became the stuff of legend. When they returned to base, a doctor was waiting as the helicopter landed. The medic explained that the lieutenant had died. The doctor nodded, pulled out a penlight, and said, "Want to reconsider your diagnosis?" As he shone the light in the lieutenant's eyes. His pupils shrank. They rushed the revived lieutenant to the operating room. Baker was one of those guys who never seemed to age. He didn't talk much, but when he did, everyone paid attention. During the downtime between missions, he showed his appreciation to Tom and his team by teaching them basic but effective hand-to-hand defense techniques. "I know the biggest threat you'll face is a jammed copier or a nasty paper cut," Baker joked with a grin. "But if you stay in this business long enough, you might find yourself in some interesting places. So if you run into any unfriendly locals, you'll have a few tricks to rely on. But let's hope paper cuts are the worst you'll ever face." Tom worked to calm his breathing, leaning back into his captor, making him think he had control. He remembered more of the techniques Baker had taught them. "You might end up in a spot where all you can do is take the shots," Baker had said. "It sucks, but it happens. The key is to remember that even when you're getting knocked, you can still fight back. You just need to be smarter than the person knocking you." Tom leaned back further into his captor, passively resisting, sapping the man's strength. Pete stood in front of him, locking eyes with Tom. "Give me the phone, Tom," Pete said. "Now you know I've been sleeping with your wife. You're just a weak nerd. Do what we tell you, and maybe you can still have Alice when the team isn't using her. Hell, maybe she'll buy you a rubber woman for when she's busy." Tom stayed silent as Pete took pleasure in humiliating him. "Where is it, Tom?" Pete asked, spotting the outline of the phone in his shirt pocket. Here it is." He reached for it with his right hand. In that moment, Tom slammed his right heel down hard into his captor's shin and dragged it down to his Gucci moccasins, crushing the man's toes. He flexed his arms, breaking free from the grip. The man cried out, collapsing as his leg gave way. Tom saw the look of shock in Pete's eyes as he shot his right hand forward. Turning his shoulder as Baker had taught him, Tom delivered a powerful punch to the center of Pete's face. He felt a bone crack under his fist, and blood gushed from Pete's nose. Pete dropped to the floor as if struck by an axe. Tom turned around to see who had been holding him. It was Bill, lying on the floor, crying and clutching his leg. "I think you broke my leg," Bill whined. Tom stomped hard on Bill's foot, and Bill screamed in pain. "That should clear up any doubt," Tom said, turning back. He saw Pete on the floor, both hands over his face, struggling to get to his knees. Tom walked over, leaned down close to Pete's ear, and whispered, "Looks like your nose is broken, Pete. I'm just not willing to take one for the team." Then he punched Pete hard in the temple, sending him back down. Tom's adrenaline was surging, his breathing quickening as he scanned the room for Alice. At that moment, he felt a sharp blow to his back and neck. Dropping to one knee, he spun around, ready to face another attack. He looked up to see Alice holding a cast-iron frying pan. "Tom, we can still fix this," she said, panicked. "Think about the money you're about to throw away. I'll stop all the extra Zex. It'll just be you and me, like it used to be." Rubbing the back of his head, Tom was stunned by how quickly Alice shifted from one version of herself to another. For a moment, he thought of the alien from John Carpenter's The Thing, how it constantly changed shape to adapt to new threats. The thought made him smile. Alice misread his smile as agreement and moved to hug him. Tom steadied her with his left hand. After a brief pause, he raised his right hand and punched her square in the nose, not hard enough to knock her out, but hard enough to break the bone. Alice screamed and collapsed onto the floor. "It hurts, doesn't it?" Tom said. "Your eyes are watering, you can't see, you can't breathe, and there's blood everywhere. Works every time." "Why did you touch me?" she cried. "Because I could," Tom replied. Tom's phone was still on and recording. While not all of the evidence worked in his favor, He felt he had enough to justify his actions. He quickly surveyed the room, recalling what Staff Sergeant Baker had once told him. Decide when you can act, and don't move until the time is right. But once you do, give it your all, and don't stop until no one else is moving but you. He scanned the room again. Aside from Bill whining in the corner and Alice trying to stop the bleeding from her nose, Tom was the only one still moving. You saved another one, Tom thought to himself. Doesn't look like it, lover boy. And Bill will still make it to work on Monday. Too bad he'll miss out on all those millions in bonuses. He thought about calling emergency, but hesitated, knowing that once the police arrived, he'd lose his chance to question Alice. Walking over to her, he saw her sitting with a dish towel pressed against her face. Kneeling beside her, he showed her, "Pinch the bridge of your nose with your thumb and index finger like this." As the adrenaline left his system, Tom felt a sudden wave of exhaustion and sank heavily into a seat across from Alice. He stared at her, wondering where his wife had gone. The Alice he saw every day wasn't the same woman sitting in front of him now. How had she managed to deceive him for so long and so completely? Was it worth it? Tom asked. Alice shook her head. It could have been, she said, her voice strained. If you had just agreed. We were so close. After Monday, I'd be heading to the executive suite. This will set me back, but I can fix it. It'll just take time. So, this is your dream? Becoming vice president? Tom asked, disbelief in his voice. What about us? The lies, the deception, is that going to keep happening? Tom, you're so naive, Alice replied coldly. Pete saw that. He told me your rigid morals and Boy Scout mentality would hold me back if I let them. He said I needed to break free of your control and become my own person if I wanted to succeed. Did he say that before or after he slept with you? Tom retorted. You don't know the half of it, she spat. I tried being the good little engineer doing everything you said would boost my career. Want to know what actually works? She sneered, daring him to respond. Tom stayed silent, still recording. Fine, I'll tell you, she continued, her voice dripping with venom. All those things you preached, they didn't work. I bent over backwards to meet every deadline, every budget, and all I ever got was a well done girl. It wasn't until Betty pulled me aside that I learned what it really takes for a woman to get ahead. Trust me, Tom, using Zex to climb the ladder works, and it's a lot easier and more fun. So this started before Pete? Tom asked quietly. For a smart guy, you're pretty slow, Alice scoffed. It started at the Christmas party the year after I joined Crimerica. That's when I slept with Art for the first time. I've never looked back. Tom's face twisted in disbelief. Wait, you've been sleeping with Art? Art Vanderlei? He asked, incredulous. Yes, Tom. Art, Pete, Bill, and anyone else on the team who can help my career. Hell, even now if you think you've figured it all out. We told Art where we were headed before coming here. He's gathering the team and giving them a cover story about our absence. They'll move forward without us, but the extra effort we put in with their purchasing managers will pay off. Do I even want to hear this? Tom thought, but curiosity pushed him. Extra effort? He prompted. Alice smiled darkly. You've always been proactive, Tom. Well, at the bidders conference, it was easy with the men, but we had to get a little more creative with Brenda, the woman on the selection committee. It's funny, I can even seduce a woman, but I had to bring Pete in to seal the deal. Tom's face remained unreadable as Alice continued. If we factor in the promises we made about collaborating after the contract is signed, the committee is perfectly aligned, Alice said. So, if everything was set, why did you and Pete resort to force to get here? Tom asked. It was Pete's idea, Alice admitted with a shrug. Pretty stupid, really. I told him to relax, that I could come home, calm you down, and still make it back in time for the flight. But he wanted to play the alpha male. And now, instead of being the face of the winning team, I'm sitting here with you. Tom shook his head. You wouldn't have won me over that easily, he said. Maybe not, Alice replied coolly, but I still would have flown. Well, now you're definitely not flying, Tom replied. He recalled Pete's arrogance and realized Alice probably had a transmitter with her. Art, are you listening? I think it's time I called the police. I'm sure there are several felonies involved, and we haven't even touched on the fraud. Tom's voice was calm and controlled. This is a federal contract, isn't it, Alice? He asked rhetorically. Yes, she reluctantly admitted. And the feds don't usually take kindly to extra efforts. I'm sure you have excellent lawyers, but there might be another way, Tom hinted, letting the suggestion hang in the air. A moment later, Alice's phone rang with a familiar ringtone. Hail to the chief. Art, she answered. Yes, let me put it on speaker, she said. Art's voice came through the speaker. First, let me apologize to you. Pete's actions were a serious mistake. I can assure you the board of directors will deal with him firmly, Art said. Thank you, Art, Tom replied, feeling a wave of relief. Glad to know you and the board take attack and fraud seriously. These are unfortunate accusations, Art continued. The lawyers will get rich, but no one wants to stir things up too much. We can pay the fines. Pete and Bill will likely get community service. But in the end, you'll get divorced and end up half as poor. Is there an angle to this, Art? Tom asked. Alice always said you were the smarter one, Art replied. But I'm still glad I hired Alice. Yes, Tom, there is an angle here, Art continued. Kramerica took your wife's loyalty, and when you discovered this and called it out, you were treated terribly. Disgraceful, unacceptable, Tom added. Tom, Art said, instead of calling the police, as you mentioned, we could come to an arrangement. I just sent a photo to Alice's phone. Well, not me personally, but one of my tech guys. It'll disappear after it's viewed. Take a look. Maybe it'll help smooth things over with Alice. Alice opened the photo and showed the phone to Tom. He saw the words Bank of Grand Cayman and a number, a very large number. And when will this be available? Tom asked. It's already there, Tom. You've got an email with your account number. It's been a rough day for you, Tom, and I understand you might be struggling to decide what to do. Emotions are strong, but Alice has been deceitful. Still, you can't take emotions to the bank, right? They don't pay. Tom nodded, mimicking Art's tone. Kramerica will handle the cost of your divorce. There's no going back now. We all know Alice will file. She'll demand her personal belongings and pension. He paused for a moment before answering. On one hand, he could take a principled stand, expose the entire ugly situation, and deal with the fallout. On the other hand, he could just walk away. Art had just given him 5 million reasons to choose the latter. Does Kramerica have medical personnel? Tom asked. Oh, yes, Tom. I believe we have several doctors, Art replied. Good, Tom said. You might want to load a few into a limousine and send them here for your team. So we have an agreement? Art asked. With Alice, Tom confirmed. Exactly, Art agreed. Are we done, Tom? Goodbye, Art, Tom said, ending the call. Tom took out his phone, turned off the recording app, and slid it back into his pocket. Alice, trying to regain her charm, gave him what she thought was her most winning smile. I knew you'd see things our way, Tom. We can still be friends. Friends with benefits when this is all over, she said, smiling, though her broken nose and blackened eyes ruined the effect. Dried blood clung to her face, dripping onto her chin. Tom found the sight amusing and allowed himself a brief smile. Once again, Alice misread his expression as approval and leaned in to kiss him. Tom extended his right hand, stopping her. Grabbing her face, he shoved her back until she crashed onto the sofa. Either I strike you too hard or not hard enough. What world do you live in where I'd want to kiss you, Alice? He asked, watching her look up at him with an offended expression. Take whatever you want, but don't be here tomorrow, Tom said as he walked to the door. He stopped beside Bill. Legs still hurt? He asked. Yes, damn it, you prick, it still hurts, Bill complained. Maybe this will distract you, Tom said, delivering a swift kick to Bill's groin. Bill doubled over, groaning in pain. Tom got into his car, not knowing where he was headed, but aware that food and shelter were now his top priorities. He grabbed a hamburger from a nearby cafe and checked into the Red Roof Inn just outside the city, close to the highway. He fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. Despite the soreness and the countless, yes, at least 100 aches from the various injuries his body had endured, Tom woke up early and dragged himself out of bed. As he made coffee in his motel room, his phone beeped and he reached for it. It was a message from that number. He opened it immediately. Sorry about yesterday. I can meet you at the shopping center around noon. Take a seat at the bar. I'll be there. He typed a quick reply and then poured the lukewarm brown liquid from the coffee maker into a paper cup. Yes, I'll be there, he thought to himself, setting up his laptop. Time to handle some online banking. Back in college, long before he met Alice, Tom had an economics professor who advised students to always keep at least one offshore account as a rainy day fund. With nothing to lose, and with the professor's help, Tom had opened a new bank account in the Caymans. He called it his Love You Foundation. He set it up 10 years ago and added to it whenever he could, proud of the $50,000 balance it had accumulated. Now, his Love You Foundation was about to get a significant boost. Tom logged into each bank's secure website with just a few keystrokes and transferred most of Kramerica's payment into his personal offshore account, leaving $100,000 in the original account. Afterward, he took a shower, changed clothes, and got ready to meet the mysterious sender of the message. Tom arrived just after noon. As he walked inside, a man waved to him. He looked to be about Tom's age, handsome and well-dressed. Tom walked over to him. "I think you sent me a message," Tom said as he sat down. "I'm sorry things turned out this way," the stranger began. "Why don't we start with who you are and how you know Alice?" Tom replied. "I was part of the team. I left the Army after 8 years. I was injured in combat, had a long recovery, and was discharged for medical reasons. I joined Cramerica about 6 months ago and was assigned to Pete's team 3 months ago. I was telling a friend about my job and mentioned that I work for Alice. When he heard her full name, we realized we had a mutual friend, and he asked me to keep an eye on Alice as a favor. At first, everything was great. The team welcomed me warmly. Then about 2 months later, Alice approached me. She's attractive and persuasive, but when I asked about the wedding ring, she just smiled and said, 'It's fine with you.' I didn't agree and made that clear. That's when the cold shoulder began. After turning her down, I got stuck with all the worst assignments and constant grief from Pete. I told our mutual friend what had happened. He suspected there was more going on with Alice and thought you should know. Pete sent me that photo to try and recruit me to their little scheme, offering a prize if I joined. Let's just say I don't agree with their approach. I quit yesterday and sent you the message." "Our mutual friend, Troy Baker?" Tom asked. "If I hadn't met Troy," he replied, pausing for a moment, "let's just say he helped me out of a tough spot when I was a Green Lieutenant. I owe him a couple of favors." "We both do," Tom agreed. "What are you going to do?" the stranger asked. "Art pretty much laid it out for me. I could involve the cops, and yeah, Bill, Pete, and Alice would be in legal trouble. But with Art's lawyers, it would all come to nothing. We struck a deal. You might think I'm selling out, and maybe I am, but they took the one irreplaceable thing I had. If I can't make them pay legally, at least I'll make them pay in other ways. It won't bring Alice back, but I'm starting to think she's less irreplaceable than I once thought. I've got a trip planned. Tell Troy thank you for everything. I'm not going back to work." "And what about you?" Tom asked. "Well, Troy always spoke highly of Baxter Inc., and now that you're out, they might need another engineer. I think you'll find Baxter does things a little differently. The work's challenging, but the benefits don't compare to what Pete's team was offering." Tom smiled. "I think I can live with that." The stranger stood and Tom followed suit. They nodded at each other and left without saying another word. On Monday, Tom had just checked in for a flight to Costa Rica. Tamarindo seemed like the perfect place to relax for a while, he thought. As he walked toward security, he spotted a mailbox ahead. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out an envelope addressed to the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. Inside was a flash drive containing a recording. Maybe they'll be interested, he thought. Who knows, maybe Art's lawyers aren't as good as he thinks. He dropped the envelope into the mailbox and continued toward the security line. 9 months later, Tom sat at his usual table in a cafe. Anna, as lovely as always, brought him his cerveza. "Thank you, dear," he said, raising the bottle to his lips. He had just received some mail and was still holding the envelope in his hands. There was no return address, and he wondered who had tracked him down. While he hadn't taken extreme steps to stay hidden, finding him in a small town on the Pacific coast of northern Costa Rica required more resources than the average person had. His first thought was that Art's people had located him. He let the envelope sit at home for 2 days. He was sure it wasn't a bomb, but he couldn't be too cautious. "Carlos?" Tom called to the cafe owner. "Do you have a knife?" "Si, Mr. Tom," Carlos replied. Tom handed him the envelope and stepped back. You can never be too careful, he thought as Carlos opened it. Carlos passed the opened envelope back to Tom, and Tom thanked him. After another sip of his beer, he turned the envelope upside down. A few sheets of paper fell onto the table. He picked up the note. "Thought you might be interested," it read, with no signature, just a phone number, the same number. Troy would have the resources to find me, he thought. I can live with this. He flipped over another sheet of paper. It was a copy of a newspaper article with a photograph showing Pete, Bill, Alice, and Betty being led out of the Cramerica building in handcuffs. The headline read, 4 accused of multi-million-dollar procurement fraud. Tom smiled. Maybe Art's lawyers aren't what he thought, he mused, a habit he had picked up since his Spanish was weak and English wasn't widely spoken around him. He liked hearing English, even if it was just his own voice. "Anna, another beer, please," he called, holding out his empty bottle. "Sigh, Mr. Tom." "Thank you, Anna," he said, accepting the beer, taking a sip, and gazing out at the deep blue Pacific Ocean. 9 months had passed since Tom had last set foot in the world of high-pressure engineering and corporate scandals. Costa Rica had become his sanctuary, a place where he could piece together a semblance of a peaceful life after the chaos that had turned his world upside down. The quiet rhythms of the small coastal town provided the contrast he needed to the frenetic pace of his former life. Tom had found solace in simplicity. Days were filled with the warm tropical air and the sound of waves crashing against the shore, while nights offered nothing but the soothing lull of distant tides and the occasional laughter of locals enjoying the sunset. He hadn't touched a drafting board or a computer monitor since he left, and he wasn't planning on it anytime soon. The betrayal that had shattered his trust in Alice and his colleagues was now a distant memory, one that resurfaced only in the occasional dream or when a news story reminded him of corporate greed. He had cut ties with Cromerica, packed away his engineering past, and closed that chapter with the knowledge that, sometimes, justice was not won in the courtroom, but in the quiet victories of a peaceful life. But, as peaceful as it was, something lingered. There was a loose end that never quite settled, something left unresolved. Despite the headlines, the arrests, and the millions recouped from Cromerica's fraud scandal, Tom couldn't quite shake the feeling that there was one more card left to play. It wasn't long before that card appeared. A small, unmarked envelope slid under the door of his bungalow one morning. He recognized the handwriting, neat and precise, the same as the note that had led him to Cromerica's downfall. His mind flashed to Troy Baker. The envelope contained another flash drive, a single piece of paper, and a simple message. "Thought you might want to see this." Tom's heart raced as he stared at the drive. He debated with himself for a long moment, standing by the open door with the salty breeze from the ocean swirling around him. He could throw it away, keep walking forward, and never look back. But his curiosity got the better of him. Plugging the flash drive into his old laptop, he opened the file. It was a video. Grainy at first, then clearing into focus. Tom's breath caught. The scene was unmistakable. A corporate office, tall windows framing a skyline that Tom recognized all too well. Alice was there, standing next to Art Vanderlee, speaking to a small group of executives. She was poised, confident, and smiling that same disarming smile she had once used to charm him. But what followed was far more than business as usual. Art began outlining a plan, a scheme even more elaborate than the fraud they had already been accused of. This wasn't about millions, it was about billions. The contracts they had manipulated were just the beginning, a small piece of a much larger puzzle. Art and Alice were plotting their next move, one that would place them at the helm of a global tech conglomerate with unchecked power. Tom sat back in his chair, the weight of realization sinking in. They hadn't been stopped, not really. Alice, Pete, and the rest may have been temporarily caught, but the machinery was still turning, their plans still in motion. His gut twisted, knowing that while they had paid a price, it wasn't nearly enough. Their ambitions were far from over. He watched the video again, this time focusing on Alice. She had always been ambitious, but this was something else. Her moral compass had shifted so far that there was no turning back. And Tom knew, with a sudden clarity, that walking away wasn't an option anymore. Costa Rica had been a retreat, but it wasn't the end of the road. As much as he had wanted to leave it all behind, this was his fight. They had taken too much from him, his trust, his marriage, his career, and they had almost gotten away with it, but not anymore. Tom powered down the laptop, packed his bags, and left a note for Anna. There was no goodbye, just a promise to return. But first he had some unfinished business to attend to. The flight back to the U.S. was uneventful, but Tom's mind raced with plans. He had learned a lot in the last few months, about people, about power, and about himself. He wasn't the same man who had blindly trusted his wife, nor was he the passive engineer who let things happen around him. This time, he was going to be the one pulling the strings. He would use the information Troy had given him, but he wouldn't go straight to the authorities. He needed leverage, a way to dismantle the entire operation without risking his own neck. He'd learned the hard way that the corporate world wasn't about justice, it was about survival. And this time, he was going to survive on his own terms. As the plane descended into the familiar skyline of his former life, Tom smiled to himself. Alice, Art, and the rest of them had no idea what was coming. They thought they had won, but they had underestimated him, just like they had underestimated the power of someone with nothing left to lose. This time, it wasn't about money or revenge. It was about making sure they never hurt anyone else again. And as Tom stepped off the plane, he knew one thing for certain. The game wasn't over. It had just begun.